Okay, let's hope this all works. Okay, hello everybody. At the beginning of this video, I wanted to thank you for joining this family, for subscribing to this channel. I really was not dreaming about hitting 5k this year. If you plan to come to Sri Lanka this year, I think you still should come, because now the country, even though that is facing the economic crisis, people need tourist money more than ever. I left Sri Lanka at the beginning of March, and I was not affected almost at all by the economic crisis, because back then it actually only started. It would be different right now, but if I had more time to spend in Sri Lanka and I wouldn't have to come back to work, I would definitely stay more. If you watch it in 2023 or in the next years, I really hope that Sri Lanka and its economic crisis is already over. So Sri Lanka, I'm rooting for you, and I hope that you get over it very soon. I hadn't planned to go to Sri Lanka, and I had to rebook my flights like 10 days before the initial flight, so I did not have a lot of time to actually research stuff about country. I was just watching some vlogs on YouTube. When I do my research, like very thorough research, I feel like it's like I know already and I'm prepared, and I like this element of surprise when actually something happens out of guidelines, you know? So this is personally me, but I know that there are people that like to be prepared. That's why I'm creating this video. So the first thing I wanted to talk about as a tip, and if you're going to Sri Lanka, prepare yourself to get a culture shock if you've never traveled to Asia before, just like me. Sri Lanka was my first Asian country to visit. For me, the first 5 days were kind of like slow-mo, you know, everything was like, whoa. I remember that I just didn't know where to look. It really seemed like playing a role in a movie, but everything was in slow-mo. The second tip would be how to recognize buses, and there are private buses and government buses. The government buses are red with this line going throughout the whole bus and the little lion, and they actually give you a receipt, and they most likely will not rip you off. I'm not going to give you right now the price range of the buses, because that keeps changing. I know that with the economic crisis right now, the price is probably higher than it was when I visited Sri Lanka. So back then it was like 20 rupees per very short ride, for example 5-10 minutes ride. If you want to take private buses, make sure to ask for a receipt. Most likely they will not give you a receipt, because they are trying to give people tourist price, and if I ask for a local price, they don't care. All the other colors than red are the private buses. They usually look a little bit fancier inside. They have like the Buddha posters and TVs and stuff like that. So you can recognize the private buses by that. And also the price would be higher, like not everywhere, but sometimes they were trying to charge me 5-10 times more than the local price. My subjective observation was that people up north, in Anuradhapura for example, they were not trying to give me much higher price. Maybe they would sometimes charge me 20 rupees more than the local price or the fair local price. My another tip would be to carry cash everywhere. If you see ATM and you think, I have a little bit of money, just take more cash than you need, because then you regret if you go to some village that has no ATM and then you have a problem to pay for your accommodation, to pay for food, etc. For example, I went to Ohia village and they literally had no ATM. So if I came to Ohia village without no money, I would have to go to some other bigger villages, towns, to actually get an ATM machine. And then we have trains in Sri Lanka. Isn't that something that I was excited for, to be honest? Trains are one of the one of my favorite ways to travel with. And not every train has all classes, so there are 3 classes. Not all trains have first class, not all trains have reserved seats, some of them have only reservations, some of them more like local slower trains. They don't have reservation, they stop at every single station, and sometimes they wait for a very long time, like half an hour at the station or in the middle of nowhere, which seems completely fine if you're on a way that has amazing views. For me, I had good experience with all the trains, both reserved and unreserved. It really depends on the time of the day you travel. Sometimes you get the ticket without reservation and you can sit easily wherever you want, and sometimes depending on the route and the time of the day, you just can't sit anywhere. So it really depends, but I don't mind, because for example, when I was standing for 2-3 hours on the train sometimes, yes, my legs were hurt, but I met amazing people and we exchanged observations and tips regarding Sri Lanka, and we had fun, you know, so I really don't regret anything. In terms of other types of transportation, I would suggest you to download the app called PickMe and Uber. I was using both of them in Sri Lanka in terms of ordering tuk-tuk and any rides. Sometimes you can get really higher price if you just don't use the app. At the end of my trip, when I was coming back to the airport, I had this situation when we approached the airport. He clicked something in his app, right, on his phone, and then I asked him, "You prefer cash or a card?" And I think he didn't speak much English, but he was like thinking for a second what would be better, and he said cash. And then I said, okay, wait a minute, and I checked my Revolut app, because I use Revolut for my travels, and I saw already that he charged me. So first he charged me through PickMe, and then he wanted also cash. So I showed him the app, and I showed him, hey, can you see that? It's actually already charged me. And he said, oh, okay, bye-bye. So the thing about Sri Lanka is that a lot of people smile. But that's something obvious. If you've watched my films, you know that a lot of people smile. There's this kindness vibrating in the country that it's hard not to notice that, right? Everyone smiles at you. The tuk-tuk drivers when they offer you a ride, strangers when they want to help you for nothing, and then you have these cameras that smile because they want to scam you. So in terms of scammers, I'm gonna create a separate video next week, and I will share my very intimate history, my experience, my painful experience with scammers. For now, I can only say that if you travel solo, you're more targeted than if you travel as a couple. So be mindful of that. Another one, very important, is that you can meet wild animals everywhere. I personally didn't meet any leopard, but Sri Lanka is one of the countries where you can meet venomous snakes. And I hadn't known about that before going to Sri Lanka. I had no idea. So I'm gonna link down in the description box a very useful article. You can just have a look at the venomous snakes. So if you see any snake, you can more or less recognize if you should run away fast or you should run away very fast. Like me. That time when I saw a snake was the first time ever in my life that I saw a snake. Probably if you see a snake in the wilderness, there's a high chance that the snake can feel you first and can recognize that you're around sooner than you will see the snake. As a reminder, snakes don't see, they're blind, and snakes don't hear, so all they can sense, feel, is the vibration. So it's good to carry the stick with you and make the constant vibrations if you're somewhere in rural areas where snakes are more familiar. Hey, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. That will really make my day. Another one, the reason why I actually uploaded my first video with such delay is that I had a very poor Wi-Fi connection. If you come to Sri Lanka to work remotely, or if you're a content creator and you need Wi-Fi, not talking about fast Wi-Fi, I'm talking about any Wi-Fi. If you use booking.com, then like if you literally going through the hotels, make sure to look in reviews for Wi-Fi. But don't be surprised if the reviews are saying that, yeah, the Wi-Fi was awesome. When you actually arrive there at the hotel, guest house, wherever, it may suck. It happens all the time actually. To me, it was completely irrelevant. If you care about the Wi-Fi speed, or if there's any Wi-Fi, it's better to just call the hotel and ask them. Just simple as that. As a backup, you can also get the SIM card, Dialog SIM card, and you can get the app, and you can get one of their packages, because it's much better than just topping up. When you top up, for example, for 500, you get some data, and then you get the bonus night data, which is kind of useful if you work at night. But if you don't work at night, like I'm not a night creature, so I left Sri Lanka with a few gigs of night data because I don't work at night. So, and with these packages, you can get basically unlimited social media, unlimited YouTube if you're into that kind of things. And another thing completely blew my mind is the list of unsustainable attractions, tourist attractions. So this is the thing that before going to Sri Lanka, I saw that website, and then I completely forgot about it. Like when I was in Sri Lanka, I forgot about it. Usually I try to avoid resorts and big hotel chains. I don't think that they are sustainable. I can't even afford them, so it makes no sense. And then when I returned from Sri Lanka and I had a look at it again, I noticed that unfortunately I paid for one attraction, and that was Wilpattu Safari Park, which is on that list. But I'm gonna leave that list completely to you, and you can just judge that list. And let me know what you think. So basically that list contains all the unethical sites, hotels, attractions that are owned by the government or by the Sri Lankan army. In terms of going off-road and going to less popular places in whole Sri Lanka, but there are places where I had no signal. Like for example, this Ohia village. I stayed in the guest house. There was no Wi-Fi whatsoever. I think the family had just a small router for their kids, but that's it. There was no Wi-Fi for the guests, and I stayed there 3 nights. And there was only one place on the whole property with a signal, and that was on the hill. And as you can imagine, the hill in high Sri Lankan mountains, it was pretty cold. So what I was doing, there was this plastic garden chair on top of that hill, and I would just wrap myself all in the blankets, sitting there with my laptop and edit the first video because that was the only place with an actual signal. So be prepared that if you go to Sri Lanka, you can get yourself into that kind of situations. But that was only fun. That hill actually had amazing views, so that was one of the best offices I've ever worked from. Another thing, as you may know, some of the big companies like Nike, Victoria's Secret, and probably a few others, they moved their businesses and their sewing part to Sri Lanka. So many Sri Lankan women, mostly women, maybe also men, they really know what they're doing. I was so amazed that I would just go to one of these small shops where they would sell their clothing, and I could see that in the back of the store there was a lady sewing it all, and then what she was sewing she was putting straight to the store. There was like no transportation, no logistics, just simple as that, you know? Designing, producing, and then selling. And all of that was happening in one store. So if you're going to Sri Lanka, don't pack too many clothes. Just buy something and support the local community of amazing people that are artists. And the last thing, a little bit weird, but because I'm a foodie. Oh, I've noticed that when I went to Booking and I booked a stay with a breakfast included, usually the breakfast would come kind of European style. And I'm bored with European style. I have European style here in Portugal. My advice would be to go completely different, to book stays that don't offer breakfast included, that you can buy breakfast separately, like for $3.50, but separately, because then they serve you the most amazing Sri Lankan breakfast. And unfortunately, they always give too much, so I can't eat it all. But damn, it's so delicious. And the most amazing thing that everything is vegetarian. Sometimes I would forget to mention that I'm vegetarian and I wanted something vegetarian for breakfast, and they would always bring vegetarian anyway. Most of the guest houses that I stayed in, they also were offering dinners, not in price. Of course, yeah, I needed to pay extra, like $3 or $4 for dinner, but that was amazing. That was an amazing option. Sometimes I was just too tired after the whole day of exploring, and I just wanted to eat something and go to sleep, and that was an amazing thing. So be mindful of that. And if you're staying at the guest houses, which I recommend with all my heart, just ask these people to prepare something for dinner for you. I'm sure they will be happy to do that. Okay guys, this is it for today, and I hope that the next time when I go to Sri Lanka, I really hope to come back to Sri Lanka, you know. Please don't ask me when I'm going to come back to Sri Lanka, because I don't know, because this is one of the two questions that I get. How is Sri Lanka treating you, and when are you coming back to Sri Lanka? Two of the most popular questions. I have no idea when I'm going back to Sri Lanka, but I can assure you I had an amazing time, and it was definitely too short. 3 weeks, too short. If I would come back, I would come back for sure for at least 2-3 months. Then I'll have to quit my job. These dogs are gonna kill me. And the children are out again in the kindergarten.